I don't know if it's good or bad. I haven't even looked at it that way. Like, is it good for sport or is it bad for sport? I've been trying to kind of analyze it from the standpoint of, is it good for the Sixers or not? And is it something that fans and NBA followers understand and accept? And I'm unsure about the answers to both of those questions.
One thing is for sure, there is a lot of polarizing discussion about this and what the 76ers are doing. And if you look at it from, look, they were stuck in the middle for so many years, and now they're at the bottom, and people say, I'm sick of this. Do you think that it indicates how year to year people change their opinion on things? Like, it's almost like, did you ask the people, hey, did you remember that this team only won 50 games one time since 1990? It's like they weren't going anywhere, yet you're angry about what they're doing now.
Yeah, I think at some level what the Sixers are doing gets to the heart of kind of the core question about being a fan in a way. Do you want to be entertained all the time? Or do you want to win a championship above all else? Like, which one of those is more important to you? Because the NBA really puts that question to all of its fans. You can be the Golden State Warriors or the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Los Angeles Clippers and have a legitimate chance to win a championship. And, of course, that's going to be inherently entertaining. But if you're not at that level, what do you do to get to that level? And what sort of sacrifices are you going to have to make? And do you choose as a franchise to do what first the Sixers did for years and years and years, which was kind of, remain passively relevant in that win 35 to 45 games kind of way, and, hope somehow that you get hit by a bolt of lightning one year in the draft and become a great team by drafting a great player? Or do you become bad and increase the opportunity that you're going to get a high draft pick or multiple high draft picks and give yourself a better chance of getting that superstar? But the problem is you're going to have to live with being just absolutely god-awful for a year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe 4.
I guess the one question that the people would ask that are kind of bailing is, isn't a third year of this too much? Shouldn't there have been steps in the right direction? Or, my response to that, Mike, has always been, well, I guess the question is, how long do you want to win for? Is it a short amount of time, or do you want an elongated period of success? I guess that factors into how long you have to put up with losing, no?
Yeah, I agree. And, I had this conversation with somebody last week in which, they pointed out the Sixers haven't won a game and this and that. And at this point, I would argue the difference between the Sixers being 0-12 and let's say 2-10 or 3-9 is nil, that there is no difference. The idea is that, I think people don't like the idea of being embarrassed by being a Sixers fan or by having the Sixers associated with Philadelphia. It's kind of like, what? Why do we have to put up with this? We've only won one championship since 1983 as a city among the 4 teams, and now we've got this team that's trying to lose, and so much of our collective identity is wrapped around sports, and now our sports teams are lousy, and one of them is trying to be lousy, and it's embarrassing. And I totally understand that. I totally get that, which is why, my sort of kind of counter to that is, okay, well, what did you think was going on before they started this plan? Like, were you happy, winning 38 games, and being the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference and getting blown out by the Miami Heat or the Detroit Pistons or the Orlando Magic? Because that's what was happening over and over again. It was like, being on a hamster wheel.
I agree with that a lot. And a lot of people, it almost feels like, yeah, they didn't like that. Now they're watching this, and they're almost ready to go back to that. And I would say, what's the difference between, just like you said, I'll even take it to more of an extreme. If I win 18 games or I win 38 games, 38 might be numerically more successful, but my ceiling is pretty much topped out. If I win 18, I feel like I have a bigger ceiling. So in some ways, 18 is more successful than 38.
You're right. And some of that, though, does depend on the nature of your roster. For instance, let's say in a perfect world, the Sixers next year get Joel Embiid back healthy, get Dario Saric coming over from Europe, and get at least one, if not two, really quality players, young players, out of the draft. And they win 38 games next year, okay? That maybe they get the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, maybe they don't even make the playoffs at all. That 38 wins will be different from the 38 wins that you were getting with Andre Miller and Andre Iguodala on your roster, I would think, because now you are clearly a team on the upswing. You have young guys who are getting more mature and bigger and stronger and all those things. And so that would be different. But the Sixers, before Sam Hinkie and Josh Harris got here, weren't doing that. They were just, peddling in place, as you said.
You write about a generational divide. Where do you think there is a divide? What is that divide? Where does it start? Where does it stem from?
Well, this is just anecdotally. This is my own kind of theory based on the feedback I get from readers.
It's funny that you wrote this, Mike, because literally this week we have had a very similar discussion. In fact, Alex Kennedy sent me a direct message, and he asked me, how are Sixers fans handling this? And I said exactly the same thing. It seems like there's a generational divide. The younger people seem to be on board. The older people seem not. But so go ahead with your point here, because I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I mean, and I came up with this theory based on a discussion I had with a good friend of mine who is not only the smartest person I know, he's a Yale law graduate, but he's the biggest Sixers fan I know. I've known him 25 years, and he's been a season ticket holder, he and his family, all that time. And one of the things that he pointed out, and we discussed it and kind of ironed this theory out, was, if you're an older basketball fan in the Philadelphia region, you probably remember the Sixers' glory days as your kind of touchstone basketball memories. You remember Wilt Chamberlain in the 60s, Billy Cunningham, even into Dr. J and Moses Malone and Mo Cheeks and Andrew Toney and all those guys into the 70s and 80s. But if you're a younger fan, so you have that memory and you think, I want the team to get back to theirs as quickly as possible. But if you're a younger fan, you probably remember the 90s, which were god-awful for the Sixers. Sean Bradley and Sharon Wright and B.J. Tyler and Doug Moe and terribleness all the time. And then after Iverson came and went and peaked and fell back down again, you had another 11 years where you were just kind of a middling team that really wasn't going anywhere. So a younger fan with that background is going to say to himself, you know what? If Sam Hinkie's plan offers us the chance to be great, I'm on board for it. Even if it doesn't work, I want to see what happens, and I'm willing to wait 3 years, maybe even 4, to see if it works.
It's almost the theory of, hey, they took a swing with Bynum. It didn't work, but I was on board with it because it was just something different. This is almost the same thing, but with a different theory. Like, hey, you tried that. It didn't work. I was excited because you did something different rather than being stuck in the middle because Bynum was the perceived star that they are now trying to chase.
Yeah, and I also think that, older sports fans, and this is no fault of their own, generally grew up in eras that without a salary cap. I made the point in my column today, when the Sixers got great in the mid-'70s, they got great in large part because they decided we are going to pay whatever it takes to get Julius Erving out of the ABA and away from the New York Nets. Well, you didn't have a salary cap back then. You could have paid Julius Erving whatever he wanted. It turned out $6 million was the figure. Well, once the NBA institutes a salary cap in 1984, you can't really do that. So by 2005, the Sixers signed Samuel Dalembert for 6 years and $64 million. Everybody's looking around going, what the hell are they doing? He's not worth money. He's going to take up so much cap space. It's a galactically dumb thing to do. And this younger generation of fans has grown up in that environment all the time. You're always, whether it's fantasy sports or just the real thing, you're always thinking about how does this guy fit into the salary cap and how much room do they have under the cap next year, and all those sorts of things. We do it in the NFL all the time. With the NHL, we certainly do it with the NBA, and I think that informs their patience with Hinkie. They know that at some extent he's working under certain limitations, and so they're willing to wait to see how he negotiates those limitations.
Mike, has Hinkie and the Sixers, have they gone too far, or is this precisely brilliant?
It's hard to say yet. I mean, so much of the success of this is going to come down to those 4 potential first-round picks next year, and if they can get anything at all out of Joel Embiid on the floor. I mean, he really is the linchpin of this whole thing. They took a major chance drafting him. They felt his talent was worth the risk. Obviously, he hasn't taken the floor yet and will not take the floor for them this season. They have to hope that he comes back healthy. But I think, look, I'm disappointed this year. I thought they were really going to take a tangible step forward. They have not. They have Jahlil Okafor, who's a very talented offensive player. They have Nerlens Noel, who's a very talented defensive player. If they get good, I don't imagine you'll see anybody else who is currently on this roster still around if they get good, because they'll turn all those guys over and they'll draft new guys and acquire new guys. But still, to me, 0-12 and looking the way they looked is a disappointment. Maybe getting those 2 injured guards back will help a little bit, Marshall and Roten, but it ain't going to help that much.
Mike Sielski's got a great column. It's at Philly.com, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the generational divide that the Sixers have caused. It's good fodder and a good read. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.